Art with Dungeon Crawlers Radio, and we're here with Jeff Savage, and we're here at the UVU doing a teenage boot camp and teen author boot camp, I guess it is.
Teen author boot camp.
Yeah.
Yep.
Have you been part of teen author boot camp before, Jeff?
I have. I've done it all 4 years or all 5 years. This is the 5th year. The group Writers Cubed were actually writing students of mine way back in the day that got together, formed a critique group, and then started doing the conference. And then it's gone crazy since then.
It has. It's amazing. They have over 600 kids here this year. And
just incredible.
You doing some classes for them and different things?
Yeah. I'm doing a class this year on taking an idea and taking it all the way through the plotting process, all the way from outlining to pitch, so that by the end of the class we've come up with a complete story that we could pitch to an agent or an editor.
Cool. Have you done that class then already, or?
I've done it twice. It was fun. The first one we did was they came up with a magic table that was in India, and the family who had taken care of it moved, and it had magic that it was losing, and it was trying to give it to someone else, and it gave it to a killer toaster, and it went from there. It was wild. The next one we did was a kid who was in a war and was deafened, and his best friend is a blade of grass. What he doesn't know is that he actually killed his best friend with a bomb during the war, which is what deafened him, and he now sees the blade of grass, having had all these activities with these friends, and he's in a psychiatric hospital. So they've got great imaginations.
That's amazing. Does it surprise you a little bit? You've been here now for 5 years, dealing with teens at this boot camp. Does it surprise you that they're teens? I mean,
yeah, it's interesting because I do a lot of assemblies. I've done assemblies all over the country, and normally most of your assemblies are done for a wide variety of kids. You might do a creative writing class, but to have 600 kids that are all this into writing, the ideas they come up with, the thoughts they have, the way they approach things, it's amazing, and it makes you feel really good about the future of writing.
It does, and I sit there and I look at kids around my neighborhood, teenagers, and I'm like, no, not too many of them would sacrifice their Saturday, come down here and actually be attentive and excited and pay attention.
Yeah. That would actually pay to come listen to authors on a Saturday.
It's an impressive group that's here. So
it is.
Now, Jeff, you're an author as well.
I am.
And you have quite a group of books that you have out.
Yep.
What's your most recent stuff you have coming?
Well, so I've got 3 books coming out this year. The last book in my Far World series, Firekeep, comes out probably in about a week or so. And then in June, the last book in my Case File 13 series with Harper Children's comes out. And then I'm really excited about a new series I'm doing with Shadow Mountain. The series title is The Mysteries of Cove, and it's a city built into a mountain in levels where any kind of creativity or change is against the law. And these couple of kids find these clues that this girl's father left, and as they start to put them together, they discover they're building a 30-foot tall steampunk dragon in a city where inventing is against the law. So
interesting. That sounds really interesting.
It's been a lot of fun. We were talking just a little while ago with Joe Schaefer, who's one of the people who does this conference. Her husband is he is a Hollywood prop designer, among other things, set designer, and he did the helmet for the original Iron Man costume. So Shadow Mountain actually hired him to build a 5-foot tall steampunk dragon that we'll have at the conference today, and we're taking to BEA and a bunch of the shows and signings and stuff.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. So are you actually writing these different series of books all at the same time? I mean, this seems like a challenge by itself.
It is kind of balancing it. I started with the Far World series, and then some things got delayed a little bit there. Shadow Mountain was not doing as much. You kind of had the recession hit, so that series slowed down. Then I signed the series with Harper, which they wanted to do a book every 9 months, and so we kind of cranked those out. And then as I could see both of those series coming to an end, I wrote in about a month. Last fall I wrote this Mysteries of Cove, and we shopped it and had several different publishers interested in publishing it, and Shadow Mountain happened to have an opening this fall, which was really fast. So they were written over different periods of time, but I have found myself writing more consistently to keep up, to keep stuff on the shelves.
So you haven't actually had to write all 3 books at the same time, or haven't done that in the
No.
past?
I try not to, just because in my head I get character voices down really well, and if I try to write 2 series at the same time, I'll find myself writing in the wrong character's voice.
Yeah, which I would imagine. I couldn't imagine writing more than one story at a time, because you're then dragging other things into your story that doesn't belong there.
I think it would be like someone doing like 2 plays at the same time, or an actor doing 2 movies at the same time, where in your head you get into that world. I mean, to the point that you can really see it. And I think jumping back and forth between the 2 would be, at least for me, would be really hard.
Yeah, couldn't imagine. So your writing style, your way you sit down and decide, hey, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to write. Well, what's your process? What do you do to get your flow going on?
Well, it's changed over time, because mostly when I started out, I used to be kind of a pantser, where I just sit down and write the story kind of by the seat of your pants and just see where it went. And as you start working more under deadlines and have specific things you're trying to accomplish, and knowing what you have to turn in, you don't have the time to waste a couple of months on a story. At least I don't. And so what I've started doing more is I try to put together the main points of the story, and then I divide it kind of into fourths, where I say, okay, by, there's going to be 44 chapters. By chapter 11, this needs to have occurred. By chapter, and I'll put in kind of mile markers, and that keeps me on track. The story may change, but at least I know, if I've made it to chapter 15 and I still haven't reached, this reveal, I'm in trouble.
Okay, interesting. So you have good marks that you're trying to aim for and hit those marks. Is there, with your life, do you have a hard time picturing, or let me start this over. When you got your first book published, now it's to a point where you have deadlines. Did you picture that happening when you got your first book done? I mean,
No.
Writing for a deadline seems like a whole different world than writing trying to get published.
It does, and there's pros and cons. I mean, on the one hand, it's really nice to have, and you never know for sure, but it's nice to have a pretty good feeling that what you're writing is going to get published. Before you might write 5 different stories and none of them sell, and they're all sitting on the shelf. But you had a lot of freedom to kind of do what you wanted. Once you get the deadline, the positive thing is that this is going to come out, but the negative thing is that you got to be careful to not have it turn from enjoyment into work. If you start getting bored with the story, then your writing suffers, and you never want to put out a story that feels like you're bored with it.
Okay. So you have different genres you work on.
I do.
What are some of your favorite ones you do? Do you enjoy them all the same? Is there a favorite child of yours?
Yeah. It's I started writing for adults, and I'd never written for kids. I'd never written for fantasy. In fact, when I started writing Firekeep or Waterkeep, it was to prove to myself that I couldn't write fantasy. I was like, quit thinking about that. I had some friends who were writing it. But once I published my first middle grade fantasy book, it just clicked. And since then, a thing that I hear pretty consistently, I've written for adult, I've tried some YA, but consistently from editors and publishers is you really nail that middle grade voice really well. And so my case file stuff is what I'd call younger middle grade, a little sillier, a little shorter, about 45,000 words. No one's going to come away with it being life-changing, but they're enjoyable. It's more reluctant reader stuff. But personally, what I love is writing the stuff that's a little older middle grade, more like a kind of a Percy Jackson level. Okay. Just where you're writing something where hopefully kids will enjoy it, but you also want adults, teens. I mean, you want to hit that Harry Potter mark where everybody's reading your story. It's like if you were making a movie, you'd want it to be a Pixar movie where everyone reads it and loves it.
Definitely. So your books, where can we find all your books?
Pretty much anywhere. I mean, all the usual, Barnes & Noble, Deseret Books, Eagle, Amazon, that kind of thing. The Firekeep will probably come out first in ebook. That's the series I'm actually finishing myself, but it will be available in print. And then both the Harper series and the Shadow Mountain series, they'll be, wherever great books are sold, right?
All right, so we introduced him as Jeff Savage, but he can go by J. Scott Savage.
All right, it's J. Scott
Savage. Name. So look him up, J. Scott Savage. He's books everywhere, and great different genres of all of them. So thanks for being on the show. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
you.